So what's going on? What's happening in the TV world?
Well, the big news was that the Sony X900H was not going to be bringing their update, which would have brought variable refresh rate and auto low latency mode to their one panel that actually supported that for 2020. It was on forums, it was on YouTube. I did a video on it, and now Sony has confirmed that it's back on. So, I mean, Shane, you can tell me what you've heard, but to me, it was a big deal that it was missing, or maybe they weren't going to come through with it. HDMI 2.1 gaming features have been challenging for LG and Samsung this year. So it would have made sense if they hadn't done it till they had their new processor, which is with the 2021 models.
Can you explain to the folks that are uninformed what is VRR and what is ALLM?
Well, auto low latency mode, it sounds more technical than it is. All it does is really put your TV into game mode. That's all it really does. But people like that in their setups to not have to go into game mode. They like to be able to put in a game and then have the content just switch to game mode. They don't have to touch the controller. That's really all auto low latency mode does, at least to my understanding. VRR, a lot like G-Sync and FreeSync, is, to make the frames nice and smooth. You don't have any jumps in frames, and you have no screen tearing. So you have G-Sync for NVIDIA, AMD has FreeSync, and Xbox currently supports VRR, which is like base FreeSync basically.
So is that the same as G-Sync? And is the Sony not getting G-Sync? And does it matter to you?
Sony is not getting G-Sync. I believe right now NVIDIA is the only ones that have G-Sync, which is for NVIDIA graphics cards. LG is the only one that has FreeSync, G-Sync, and variable refresh rate. But it doesn't matter to me not to have G-Sync if I'm a Sony fan, but to have variable refresh rate if you have an Xbox could be very important. The PS5 right now doesn't have VRR, which is why I think Sony doesn't think it's a big deal. But for many of you that bought a 900H, you bought that display not only because it's a good value, but because it was the only one in the Sony lineup that was offering those features. Even the Z8H or the Z9G or the 950H or any of the OLEDs don't have these features, which is why the 900H was the most popular Sony last year.
That was the only TV that could really compete with the LGs, am I correct, from last year?
Just for having those features. Picture quality wise, no. It's their lower model, which was weird that Sony put it in that spot, but a lot of people took some compromises on picture quality and went for the 900H. It's still a great panel. It's a great value, but the main selling point was, 4K 120, variable refresh rate, and to me, to a lesser extent, auto low latency mode. But go ahead, Shane. Tell me about what the news you have with the update.
So hold on. So you're saying that G-Sync really doesn't matter much for the console gamers?
Doesn't matter at all.
Unless you're a PC gamer, then.
Unless you're a PC gamer with a NVIDIA card. It's been around for a long time, but AMD has FreeSync, and then VRR is like your base version of it, which has been around since the Xbox One X, but that was supposed to come. Now, I haven't seen much screen tearing myself on the PS5, only Modern Warfare on the PS4 Pro. But as these games get more challenging, you might see screen tearing. And some people have said to me on the channel for the video that I did that Assassin's Creed Valhalla does have screen tearing right now. Variable refresh rate would take care of that. The PS4 or PS5 has to support it as well, which it doesn't currently. But if you have an Xbox Series X, that's a feature you want to use, because even panels like the TCL R635 have VRR.
So I've heard that the Sony doing 4K 120 is supposed to be kind of blurry. Is that true?
That's what I'm hearing. I haven't seen it in action myself. Something to do with the pixel shape, but it's still possible. But something to do with the processor allocation memory for it. But it's a letdown to 4K 120 I've seen on the Series X so far has been awesome. With Halo, Ori, Black Ops has been great. But to have variable refresh rate would just smooth out that image. And some people believe it also lowers input lag and latency. It just gives it a nice smooth feel. But yeah, I heard it's less than great 4K 120 on the 900H. But a lot of these TVs have struggle chain. Even the Samsung panels have had, 4K 120, but maybe not with HDR or not great HDR. So it's been really hard for all of these companies, which is why I thought it was believable that Sony might have bowed out of it and said, hey, look, we can't do it with this processor.
So with your CX, when you're doing 4K 120 HDR, like it looks good?
It looks awesome.
Yeah.
But it was rocky. Like initially, the CX had raised blacks with variable refresh rate enabled. So it's been an ugly scenario for both Samsung and LG. It's not been easy for them. So I wondered if that's why maybe they weren't bringing it to the 900H. And like I said, Samsung, there's some talk of they can do 4K 120, but not with HDR. So there's a lot of give and take, which people don't really advertise.
Yeah. So I guess people were up in uproar because they bought the 900H with the knowledge that it was going to get updated. So when the PS5 came out or the Xbox came out, that you were going to be supported, kind of future forward thinking. So lately, I think in the past week, there were those, articles saying that it wasn't going to get updated. People were pissed off about it.
Yep.
But I think from my Sony insider said that Sony never actually said it, though. They never said it wasn't going to come.
No.
I guess they just pushed it back, which leads us to today or yesterday. I heard about this yesterday. Robert actually told me about it, and then my Sony guy told me about it. And they have updated their website, which now says that which TVs now support the specified HDMI 2.1 standards. And as you can see there, the 900H is indeed supported. So, anybody that wants to sue Sony because they didn't think this feature was going to be coming to their televisions from 2020, it is now going to be supported. And how do you think this impacts Sony, or does it even impact Sony, Brian? How do you think?
So do you have the screen up now, Shane? Where it shows the lineup?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I think is interesting, we'll get to what you just asked me. But if you look at where the 900H is in the lineup, it's just having their highest end panels, including their their Z8H is their flagship for last year. The 900H is actually below the 950 and all the other OLEDs, but that's the one that has all the checks on it. Mm-hmm. That's why people were so uproared, is that some people were looking to buy an AAH or an A9G. They didn't make that purchase because they wanted those features. So that's why I think there was the uproar from people, that they, again, the 900H has great picture quality, don't get me wrong. I don't believe it's in the class of the other panels. So I thought it was odd for Sony, especially on the Z8H and the Z9G, to not have those features included. If you were to buy the 8K flagship, I'd rather have those, even though it's HDMI 2.1, it wasn't going to have those features. So to not have it is a big deal, I think, because it was promised and people, again, compromised picture quality. If you're somebody that bought the 900H because it was a fantastic value, it's still a great value. It still does 4K 120. It's still a great display. But not without those features would you have chosen that one versus the others. So them having it back on is great news. And, and Shane, we do these videos. It's never to break bad news and say, hey,
yeah,
your display is trash. Or so when people say, it's not like I told you so. It's great news that they're having it here. I think the issue was Sony had removed it, or it wasn't on the same charts that you see here. It was either removed or it might have been a mistake. But I was able to do a video on it because my community asked me about it. So I gave my opinion on it. It's not really to put a retraction. It's good news that it's on there.
Yeah. And just to reiterate that, from what I was told, that Sony never actually pulled it. They just kind of pushed it back.
Which is fine, which we talked about right before we went on live. And I would say to anybody, I don't care what you're purchasing tech-wise, these promises of tomorrow, especially since Sony's 950H came out in February last year. The 900H came out after. we had a chance, you and I, to review one. I didn't even review it because it didn't have these features, meaning it served no purpose for me to review it until it was complete. Sony typically releases their TVs in February and March, which is coming around the corner, and your last year's model's not even updated yet, meaning that the people that have had this panel since launch, they still don't have this update. So I do think Sony's still at fault. I wouldn't say sue them, obviously, but you're still not delivering what you promised to deliver. And you're delivering it so late in the game, the new models are coming out in a few months. And now, what I don't like what Sony's doing is with their new processor, their whole lineup's going to have HDMI 2.1. So that crew that compromised picture quality for HDMI 2.1 5 months ago, now here comes the new panels that are all going to have it, including the flagship 950J or whatever.
Even the new 2021 models, they're not going to be HDMI 2.1 with all the features out of the gate. They're still going to be reliant on a firmware update. So I did confirm that yesterday as well.
So, total example, we saw this with, Shane and I were talking about this with the 900F, the 930E, these other models that were promised Dolby Vision. That's fine, but just whenever they promise a firmware update, not only does it take a while for it to come out, there's always problems with them. Any firmware update. Look at LG. They spent the entire year. They're still trying to fix their variable refresh rate and issues. So I don't like this promise. And to have it overlap with the models coming out in a few months, it's someone's been sitting there with this whole time. If they had an Xbox, Shane, if you had a PS5, you haven't missed variable refresh rate. And some people have said to me, hey, look, I have a PS5. Sony hasn't said they're going to have it on that. What do I care? Well, yeah, if you only have a PS5, but most gamers, a lot of gamers have two. You know, so for console games, I think Sony does look at it that way. Hey, our own console doesn't support it.
Is there a new replacement for the 900H for 2021? Or do you think there's going to be the 900H is still going to be current in the lineup?
I don't believe so. I mean, I'm not 100% clear on what their new models are. There is a ton of them. But the 900H was in a nice valued spot. I'm not sure what the prices are going to be on the next model of it. But I do the 950H, which is now the 950J, is going to have it this year. Where the 950H last year, which was their flagship, didn't have it.
Yeah, that was weird.
What's that?
That was weird.
What's weird?
That the 950H didn't have.
Yeah, so their flagship didn't have it, and I have this battle in the comments all the time. The 950H is stunning, but since I had it and reviewed it, it was always, hey, dude, it doesn't have HDMI 2.1. Hey, it doesn't have this. So it does 4K 60. It's got great picture mode, game mode, but the 900H was always the more sought after as it was cheaper. You can get a larger size.
So it looks like the 900J is going to be the replacement for the 900H. So I guess possibly the 900H isn't still going to be like the budget option to get these gaming features. So I guess it's going to be supplanted by the 900J. And
then there's a 950J too, So it kind of puts the 900H in a weird spot simply because also Sony has a new processor.
Yeah.
So are they going to feel like, and this is to Sony, are you going to make your clientele feel like they have a gimped version of VRR? And you know, we both know companies also move on from updating last year pretty quickly at times.
Yeah, they do that all the time. We know. Like, do you remember when Samsung had the Evo box when you were supposed to get updated?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to buy a new TV every year. You would just update the box.
Yep.
And that I never seen that come to fruition.
I think you only had the one
Maybe
year
like one, yeah,
where you could do the HDR, but I don't think the panel was able to. I think the panel was 8-bit, so it wouldn't have mattered.
Yep. I mean, they're still going with it though. I mean, there's still One Connect boxes this year, and I think they're still touting upgradability.
It's huge, so the One Connect box is enormous.
Yeah. Last year's it was really big. So I mean, that's good news for Sony guys that bought the 900H for gaming. Unfortunately, the gaming machines came out before the update came out, and you weren't like future ready already for your new consoles. I don't know. Do you think they lost a lot of sales to LG because the 900H wasn't, console ready with these gaming features?
No, I think they sold a ton of them just because the price difference, the value. I mean, the 950H was cheaper than the CX, so the 900H was very budget friendly. It was sold at Costco, so I think people still bought a ton of them thinking it was coming. And Sony is usually pretty good, with supporting their stuff. They have great customer service, but I think it's just been too long, especially since people have been using variable refresh rate on the Xbox One X for a couple of years.
Yeah. How do you feel about this this talk of Samsung with their 12-bit panels this year? How do you think that's going to affect Sony?
So we talked about this with, we have to still compile all the CES stuff, but it's a weird lineup from all these companies. You have, LG, but Sony seems to be the one still releasing LEDs and OLEDs, while LG has their mini LED, Samsung has mini LED, micro LED, and has 12-bit panels, which we've all been waiting for. It's going to be interesting. I mean, you know more about this than I do as far as what the Blu-rays are mastered in, or can our players show 12-bit, true 12-bit?
It's weird because like Dolby Vision movies are mastered in 12-bit.
That's why we've been waiting for it.
But yet Samsung doesn't support Dolby Vision.
Exactly.
Yeah, how odd is that?
But do our players have 12-bit, like true 12-bit?
That's a good question. I mean, the players will output 12-bit, so I would assume so.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like really, no panels out there that's going to show it, like true 4000 nit 12-bit movies, except for Samsung apparently. But they can't show Dolby Vision.
Yeah.
Which is strange. Yeah, it's strange they jump on that. Sony or LG didn't jump on that, or even Panasonic.
Well, and it's strange too with even a lot of these mini LEDs is what's the peak brightness really going to be? Is it going to be 4,000 nits? It seems like everybody's kind of given up on that 4,000 nit number the last year or so.
Well, didn't the Sony A9G?
The Z9G did 4,000
nits.
But that was a very niche display. The Z8H did not, which was their follow-up. There is a Z9J, which again puts the Z8H in a weird spot because it's like the stepchild of... It's kind of like what the A8H went through with the A9G. You put out this other TV that wasn't quite the one before it, and then now you usurp it the very next year.
So, gentleman says the panel is still 10-bit, but the color reproduced is 12-bit. I think I heard that in one of the podcasts that has 12-bit luminance color, but still the panel is 10-bit.
Yes,
what does that mean?
I know.
What does that mean?
I'm telling you, the marketing. I did a video on the LG. It was like dual band. It's all this CPU marketing. We can read it on any box you have in this room, and I want to see it on screen. You know, so if it's 12-bit, it's like when 8K first came out, it wasn't exactly real 8K or real HD. Just put it out.
Yeah. So the question is for you guys: how many of you guys have bought a Sony 900H television, and were you looking forward to these new gaming features, and were you let down by it when you first heard that this wasn't going to happen? But now, how rejoiced do you feel that these features are now going to come? Are you still going to keep your 900H TVs, or are you going to sell it off for like a 900J or something higher from 2021? What are you guys' thoughts on this whole situation here? I don't even know if it was really a situation at all, but how do you guys feel about it? Leave a comment down below. Let us know.
But lastly, I appreciate that the chart is back up.
Yeah.
I'd like a date. Because you can easily say this chart is back up, and then what happens in 3 months, it doesn't happen because the new panels are coming out.
Yep.
If this wasn't an issue, if it was never a problem and it was vaporware, there should be a date on that. It should say coming soon or in beta. At least on forums with the LG, I've had a beta firmware update 3 weeks before release. There's no beta updates out there. So give me a date, Sony.
TVs are one of those products where it's like you're always touting like a future upgrade, and it never comes. It's like the tech world, and there's always like a yearly cycle. So it's like there's certain products out there in the world where you can purchase it, and there's always going to be like say like niche components, like maybe AV receivers and stuff like that, where they might only come out with like an AVR or processor every 5-6 years. But during that time frame, there's always support for those models for that particular life cycle.
Yeah.
Whereas TVs, it's always every year.
Yep.
And I never believe when when a company says that there's going to be a new feature coming along for this TV. I've been in the business a long time, and I've sold a lot of TVs in a very long time frame to know that features that are always touted by like these bigger brands, mass market brands, they rarely come to fruition. And I think most people know that by now. And it does suck when it doesn't happen. But I don't know, maybe in this new day and age of like the whole social media, YouTube taking over, people relying not so much on print advertisements where everybody's flocking to like YouTube or on social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, that there's more awareness to these problems or these shortcomings from these companies, that now if there's a big enough uproar that yes, these companies got to push these updates, they got to come through with their promises. I mean, we've seen it like even in like the movie world where fans have taken over Justice League. We're now seeing a Justice League cut because the fans wanted it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So who knows, maybe the 900H never was going to get this update because we're so close to the end of the life cycle. The 900J is on the way. Yeah. So why support that product? So why not just push the new model?
So even with the CX, they had an update to help the raised blacks, which it did. It also knocked 100 nits off the peak brightness, which is a lot for an OLED. Now, if we weren't paying attention to it and there weren't videos or people commenting, I know the forums do a huge presence in that. Maybe it doesn't get addressed. They just slip it by you. But these companies have to be aware that people are counting zones, they're counting peak brightness, there are calibrators, there are people out there, and they do have a voice. So even channels that are smaller, like my own, even if it does, I'll do a video tonight talking about it. But, I'm not a journalist, but they should be held accountable because I'm not sure they would have come out with it if a big deal wasn't made about it. So I just would rather see, instead of them putting up a diagram with some checks on it, tell me when it's coming.
To be fair, though, Sony did come out with their Dolby Vision updates for their past TVs.
They did. However, their Dolby Vision updates initially did not work with the Panasonic or the Oppo. They were dark.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's the funny thing. You couldn't turn them off. So if you had Netflix and your Dolby Vision was dark, you couldn't default to HDR10. You had to go through the player, I think, and then disable it. But if you use the onboard smart features, you were stuck with a very dark Dolby Vision.
Yeah.
To be fair. So they could have continued to update that, but they didn't. So, and they're not alone. I mean, like, again, these companies all move on.
Yeah. That sucks getting, that's why I can't get on board with TVs like every year, because there's always something new coming out. There's always like shortcomings every year. Listen, that's why I'm a projector guy. It's like one projector every 3 years or so, and I'm good to go.
But at least they refine that product, like you said, with receivers or processors. With TVs, it really is the very next year.
It's every year.
And look, and with these TVs, I'm sorry, the engineering group, the A team is already on to 8K. They're already on to next year. The second squad is the one that handles the updates. That's the group that is it's just a regular people trying to put them out, and they're not going to be great. And every time and this, I'll say one more thing about updates. Like I mentioned with the CX, you always, or almost always, even in gaming, hurt something that you're trying to fix. It happens with your phones.
Yep.
So when they're promising me this update, if they rush it out, what happens if it's variable refresh rate but it flickers or it knocks out HDR? So, not an update. Have it day one.
Yeah, so hopefully this new gaming update, it's not really gimped or anything like that, because then people are going to be really upset again.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's going to be news stories all about that.
But at this point, will it be too far out? You can always contact Sony. No one's saying sue Sony. You can always contact Sony. They're very good about either upgrading you to another model, but this model specifically, as we mentioned, it's not really VRR, but having 4K 120 is a big deal. And if you look at that chart that we showed before, the Z8H at like 11 grand was the only other TV that allowed it. So all those beautiful OLEDs didn't have it. They'll have it next year, which is unfortunate for those of you that bought this year, which is always the challenge.
Yeah, all the new features always come the following year, every time.
Which is why mini LED, I'll wait another year because I have a feeling it's going to be messy this year as far as
Probably, yeah.
Well-
I still want one anyways, though. So we'll see.
Still get one.
We'll see. We'll see what that 86-inch looks like from LG. What is it? QNED? QNED?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right. Anything else to add? What else you got? Anything else?
I mean, that's it. It's a weird year for updates. You know, we have 8K, but we have 4K. We have, like, LG has an 83-inch brighter panel, but they have the ZX at 20, 30 grand. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm glad I'm not buying this year because who knows what to go for. You're going to go from mini LED, LG's first try. I like LG. I don't love their LED lineups, so they have to really impress me with their mini LEDs. I think OLEDs and LEDs are at the end of the line. I think they've gotten as good as they can get. Wouldn't you say, Shane? I mean, they have to...
A little surprised that Sony didn't have a mini LED either this year.
They have like a crystal...
Yeah.
They have another kind of panel like that, but not for consumer. So for them, it's very samey. But again, for both Samsung and LG, do you want to be the beta to buy that first panel? I don't want to be the first year because TCL's 8K or 8K. TCL's mini LED was very rocky their first year. Their second year was much more refined, and they updated that other panel. So I don't want to be a beta tester for them. So I would wait an additional year.
We'll see. See in a couple months, probably March time when all the new models hit.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. What else? Anything else? I mean, I guess that's it for Sony at least. So, guys, leave your thoughts on how do you feel about the whole 900H thing. Leave a comment down below. Let us know. That it? All right. All right, guys. Thanks. That's all we wanted to cover today. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys again in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe to Brian's channel as well. Brian, where can they find you?
Whisper Status 74
on YouTube.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
So much better when we're not fucked up.